Surf's Up. How to ride the demographic wave without wiping out. How good is that as a title? No, don't like it. Today is the 19th of March, 2035. Now, I want you to remember the date. It's the 19th of March, 2035. Australia's population has just tipped over 33 million. If we go back 10 years, to 2025, it was about 26.9 million on this day. 6 million more people are in Australia. The over 65s have nearly exactly doubled. I recall being at the 2025 Leaders Summit, and there's a lot of people there talking about demographics and numbers doubling, but there's one stat that stuck. Oh, Tony's here. Hello, Tony. Can someone get another chair for me? Tony Randello, my idol, in so many ways. I've modelled myself on Tony. Haven't you got a deal to do? Can you just go out there and close the deal? The over 85s is a number that I was jumping on. The over 85s, currently about 500,000 people. 2035, we're going to have about 1.55 million. That's a tripling of the over 85s. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Inge, and I'm the acting chair. I'm soon to retire because I'm about to turn 75, of Kavonde. Kavonde, a new merged senior livings care organisation. Two of the great companies of 2025 have come together under the banner of Kavonde. And they're now, in 2035, they're the second largest owner and operators of retirement villages in this country. They're lagging quite a bit behind IP Living, but they are trying really hard. Now, as acting chair of Kavonde, I've been charged with pulling together a board of directors. And as you can see here to my right, we have a team of impeccably qualified industry professionals who over the next 40 minutes or so are going to provide their insights into what has changed in our industry over the past 10 years. Remember, we're now in 2035. Are you with me again? 2035. That's great. So let me introduce our board of directors. Daniel Gannon needs no introduction. As Executive Director back in 2025 of the Retirement Living Council. A very influential person who did a lot for the industry. He went to war with Adele Ferguson. Round one. But sadly for us, just after the 2025 conference, you might recall there was a federal election. And at that election, we had a change in government. And Prime Minister Dutton came into being. Now, a terrible thing happened over in South Australia in the seat of Barker. The incumbent, who won that seat quite well, was walking his dog and sadly got T-boned by a truck. And all of a sudden, we've got a by-election really early. This was the moment for Daniel. Sometimes in life, you've got to take those opportunities. It was not an easy decision, but all of a sudden, we've got a new member for Barker, Daniel Gannon. Identified by the Prime Minister as being a high flyer, a shooting star, very quickly became the Minister for Aged Care. Congratulations. To the Minister's right, and I should say this, that we've got special leave from the Prime Minister to allow one of his Cabinet Ministers to sit on this particular board. Those corporate governance students just don't take any notes at the moment. To his right is Sally Taylor. Now, you might remember back in the day, back in 2025, Sally spoke at the Leaders Summit and spoke very well, a little bit controversially, but you know, had a certain view on things. And as a managing director of Retirement by Moran, and as a lawyer with an honours degree, with an impeccable history and an impeccable record, has done a lot of great things in the past 10 years. She actually found her social conscience in 2028. And she took leave of absence. She went back to university and did a master's in human rights law, started working with refugees. That lasted 18 days and she came back to where she belonged. But didn't come back to retirement by Moran. No. Sally had better ideas. So please welcome Sally today, who's the Managing Director of Retirement by Taylor. To Sally's right, and on every panel you've got to have one of these. You've got to have the old, reliable, not-for-profit CEO who's been there forever and ever and ever. David's been at Southern Cross Care, has been an EGM, a Deputy CEO, an Interim CEO, a current CEO, soon to be a past CEO, I suspect. He is one of the stalwarts of the industry, has deep knowledge, deep compassion, and amazing credibility. Hence, he's earned his seat on our board. So welcome, David. Next to David is the man of mystery, Tony Massaro. Now, those of you who know Tony, don't admit you know Tony too well, because Tony initially, in the early days of the industry, he was the man of mystery. He was this kind of guy with the buzz cut haircut, a very good career in the US Army, and I was concerned that with the election of President Trump, we might have lost Tony today. He might have been called back for active duty, but he's not. And those of you who do know, Tony has a very deep history in the industry, having worked back in the day for Stockland and ING Real Estate, a very prestigious career with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and now with, or back then, with Corda. But today, the past 10 years has seen a slight change. And Tony is now the lead and senior partner of KMM, Corda Massaro. So thank you, Tony, for being here. Next to Tony is the heart and soul of the industry. This is where we all flourish from, where we all belong, the family business, the people who enter the industry wanting to help people and are consistent to their ethos. Bianca Tulich, Managing Director of the Tulich Group, has had a wonderful career with her father, building a great business. Creating a product for the Baptists. There's a very close relationship, of course, between your group and the Baptist Church, which is a wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with being a Baptist, unless you want to drink. But always got to be very careful with religious gags. You've got to be really, really cautious. But Bianca has stepped up at the time that we needed her. Because remember, we're in 2035, and in 2025, we had the election. Remember, just keep up with me. And then we lost our executive director of the Retirement Living Council, and we needed the replacement. So Bianca came along and put her hand up as the replacement for Daniel, and is ready for round 2 with Adele. So thank you, Bianca. And finally, and certainly last is not least here, Linda Mellors, CEO of Regis, the runaway train of aged care. In 2025, and I remember as if I was standing here right now, 10 years ago, I remember when because I actually spoke at that conference, I was 64 years of age. You might remember. And that's when we announced our comeback, and I jumped up here with Mark Fay, and Mark, I won't. And we talked about IP living and all that. And in 2025, I was actually talking to Linda, and we're talking about the share price of Regis. because I'm a shareholder in Regis. I'm a believer in Regis. I've done work with Regis over the years. I've had relatives live in Regis facilities. And we're talking about, and the share price was about $6. Well, guess what? It's now 2035, and the share price is $51.50 under the leadership of this great industry leader. Linda has got a very, very deep history in care, working with Mercy Health for many, many years. And one thing that many of you won't know is that Linda's got a PhD in cardiac physiology. Is that right? That's amazing. So when people say that Regis has no heart, let me tell you, the CEO knows where to find that heart. So that's our board of directors, and you are our shareholders. And you're all here to kind of witness this strategy day. Because what we're going to talk about today, and I'm looking at the clock already, Chris, this is only the intro, but I am very mindful of time. But what we're going to talk about today, we're just going to meander our way around a whole range of issues. I don't know where it's going to take us. That's the beauty of these sessions. But we have a panel of genuine experts who are going to help us have a deeper understanding of some of the issues which we're talking about here in 2035. And let me say this is being captured. Hello? This is being captured and put into a time capsule. And in 2025, Chris, I want, as a 74-year-old, to be standing here saying, roll the videotape and let's see how accurate things are. Because we're going to go back and look forward again. We can do this every 10 years until we're dead. How good would that be? Sally. How you going?
Hello.
Your old business 10 years ago, Retirement by Moran, known for high-end product, known for independent living, not so much known for care. You were, I think, about to open or close to be opening a new development in Cronulla. Is that right?
Opened in Cronulla, about to open in Narrabeen back in 2025.
That's it, 2025 at Narrabeen. That's the one I'm thinking about. Sorry, Narrabeen. The new business, Retirement by Taylor,
Yes.
has just acquired and got a beautiful site in Vaucluse with beautiful views. What I'd like to know is, this new village, how different is it going to be from the Narrabeen village that you were opening 10 years ago?
Well, it's 2035, so my new, beautiful, stunning retirement village is going to be 25 stories high. There's no height restrictions, and there's incredible support by the state government for retirement villages in particular. And they're pretty much committed to having far more seniors living built than any type of residential housing at all. So in my 25-storey building, there's going to be, approximately 250 ILUs. Mm-hmm. And then there will be a beautiful area and environment for our incredibly experienced third-party partners in care, who will be able to bring in their incredible services that they do extremely well into the village.
So you'll have an independent living village with care brought in.
Yes.
And how old will your residents be coming into that village, do you think?
So the average age of those people coming into the village are probably going to be around, I would say, 86 or 87, which in 2035 will be the new 60. Most of them will be doing weight resistance training. They will have, after their monthly usage of the infrared saunas and the various other wellness things that are on site, they will be feeling fantastic, well, fit and healthy. They will be managing their health issues through the AI-generated bot that's been provided to everybody, so that they'll be able to have their health updates.
But can I stop you there? Won't they be living too long? Does that suit your financial model?
So we don't have a concern about getting people out early, Peter. It's not. Our concern is to make sure that people live for independently for as long as they possibly can with the highest level of well-being.
Okay. Okay. Bianca, do you agree? Is that what we'll see on Sally's site in Vaucluse? What would your family build?
What would our family build?
Yeah.
Quite similar. We'd have 25 stories, but we would probably have a continuum of care on site, and that might look something like private aged care, but it would also have home care delivered into the ILUs. But we would also have additional retail services underneath. I can't quite recall, Sally, if you had those. We might even have driverless cars to support our residents and their ongoing independence.
Driverless cars?
Yes.
Is that part of...
2035.
Okay. Oh, well, it's only 10 years. Yep. And what do you think you'll be selling these for?
Price-wise?
Yeah.
Easy averaging 4 to 5 mil.
4 to 5 mil. Yep. David Moran, Southern Cross, doing any of these?
Well, we may have a slightly different tack, so I'm sure we would have a development program in place. However, we'd have a focus on health and fitness and how that serves a broader community and how the community interacts with that site, whether it's via visitation and exercise and social programs, or whether it's through telehealth programs if they can't access the site. So, yeah, so whatever we would do, whether it's of that density or not, we would probably try and incorporate something that the older community can engage with in a broader sense, and also have a virtual hub as well.
But you wouldn't want to do it in Vaucluse, would you? It's not kind of your area?
No, because we're not in South Australia. We're in South Australia. We're restricted. So
the equivalent of.
The equivalent of. Possibly not. No.
Yeah. And would you try to make a profit? Oh, sorry, you're a not-for-profit.
We'd probably try and do what a social impact group would do.
Do you actually use the word profit around your board table?
No.
Do you use the word surplus?
When we have one.
Linda, could this magnificent site in Vaucluse be the perfect site for a whiz-bang aged care facility?
Absolutely, with mirror balls.
There you go. Perfect. And do you think that is something that we can genuinely look forward to by 2035?
I think so. I think resi aged care will look quite different by 2035. You'll have much more open aged care homes where the community comes into them more, particularly because we won't have enough workers to provide all the community services that people want. So more people will come into a residential aged care hub or a retirement living hub for social interaction and activities and lifestyle.
So what do we need to get more workers? How are we going to solve that problem? Do we need any kind of change in government policy, possibly?
Well, I listened to your population projection and I did want to ask you, are they young people?
Are they young people?
Mm.
Oh, yeah, they're young people, yeah. There's young people, there's middle-aged people, some old people.
So I think we'll all be working longer by then because of longevity. You don't need to be retired for 50 years of your life, even though my husband retired at 50, bad plan. So people will be working longer. We'll move away from things like care minutes, I'm pretty sure, by 2035, because the government will have worked out that actually there isn't enough people of working age to service all of these things that they would like us to be able to do. Manual repetitive tasks will be done by non-humans. So we want to keep the humans.
Stop. Non-humans, like robots.
Could be robots.
Like what kind of stuff? Give us some examples.
I think in health and aged care, there'll be a whole lot of stuff that will be done by robots, including some health assessments, blood taking. There'll be all kinds of things that will be able to be done by robots by then.
Wow. What legislative changes have we had in the last 10 years? We're now 2035. If I recall, in 2025, there were some kind of significant changes that were coming into being. How have they gone and what other changes have there been or should have been? Because we've got the minister here and we can have a talk to the minister about what we need. So I might give you a couple of seconds to have a think about that, because I can arrange for you to have a discussion with the minister.
I can tell the minister.
Can you tell him now?
Oh, absolutely.
Great,
Yeah.
go for it.
So we're delighted to have a minister who consults with the sector. So what happened after 2025? Oh, Peter's walked away. Oh dear. What happened after 2025 is that there was a full review of all of the reforms that had been foisted upon the aged care sector. And the new government kept the good ones, but they did a productivity review of all of the reforms, and they went and actually asked the consumers of aged care services what they thought of the reforms, and they had really strong opinions on what they thought was of value and what wasn't. And they asked the workers, and in a miracle, they actually came and asked the providers what the providers thought as well. So we ended up with a whole lot of regulatory burden removed, unhelpful regulatory burden was removed, and we kept the settings that were useful for resident outcomes and worker wellbeing.
So in terms of the dialogue that the industry had with government at the time, were you speaking the same language, you and, say, David, being for-profit and not-for-profit?
Absolutely. So the sector got over itself a bit in terms of the division. And those of us who had worked back then on both sides worked out very clearly that on one side we talked about profit and the other side we talked about surplus, except for the period of time when we all became not-for-profit because the government squeezed the funding so hard.
Yes.
But we did get over ourselves, and we worked out that actually everybody who works in aged care is there for purpose. And that was the language we switched to.
Minister, thank you. That was very good. You're good. No wonder the share price is $50. I'll tell you what. Buy Regis shares. Buy them now. Remember, just pause for a minute. We're not 2035, we're 2025. I've told you what's going to happen to the share price. Okay? Any lawyers here? Is that insider trading, Jim? Okay, forget what I just said. That was a joke. That's humour. Humour's an offence, I'm sure.
Just check their liquidity first.
Yeah. Oh. Minister. We're back to 2035. Firstly, how are you enjoying politics?
Well, it's much the same. What I've spent the last couple of years doing is bringing the RLC and Ageing Australia together. We are now as an industry on the same page. It's taken a long time. We are now pushing in the same direction for policy change.
I should have said, Minister, that this is the third Dutton government. So he's been in for 10 years, Pete. But he better be looking over his shoulder because the Minister for Health has got a big eye on his job. Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
But look, also what we've seen over the past 10 years, we've been 10 years ago, Peter, you recall that we spent most days saying the words silver tsunami. And of course, that silver tsunami is now actually almost here. So there's been rapid change. We're still waiting for the aged care rules to be provided to give them to the sector. And the Aged Care Act still hasn't been turned on, which I do apologise for on behalf of this wonderful sector, but it's just taken more time because we just didn't understand how much work was actually required to get it done.
Now, can I say, the consummate politician, that was a very, very good answer. You are seriously good. But I've got a serious question for you, and I want you to think about this, Linda, and you too, David. I've got a view that the private sector should not be in aged care at all. And I want to know the Minister's view on potentially considering taking the private sector out of aged care, let them just, dabble around in retirement living. But aged care is something which is too important to allow there to be a profit motive. It's fine to have a surplus, David. So is that something which is consistent with your platform?
Oh, it is, because whenever government gets involved, nothing ever goes wrong. We as a sector have seen that for decades now. And in fact, what we've also started to do, Peter, is intervene at a state level. That reach through that we saw back in 2025 with liquidity, well, we've done that now with retirement villages bills right around the country because we know best.
You certainly do. And you've just touched on a very important point. And I'm going to come back to you, Linda. I know you want to get into this, but I want you to start thinking about the Federal Retirement Villages Act, which I think is being discussed and debated at the moment. And I think you've got all the states other than Tasmania on board. That's what I've heard. It's now 2035. So we're going to have a federal act, and it's going to fall under your portfolio, I suspect. So maybe you can talk about that in a moment. But Linda, what was I asking?
Yeah, so you were talking about aged care not being in the hands
Yes, exactly
of,
right, of the greedy
for-profit.
private sector, yeah.
That's right. So we look forward to the government's offer to buy out Regis and all of the other private providers because, funnily enough, there are other sectors that return more. So if it was just about the returns, then our shareholders could very easily go and invest elsewhere. So we look forward for a small premium to you buying us out.
Good. Now, the media in the room, the headline tomorrow is Regis asks government for bailout. You were a great CEO. It doesn't take much, does it? Just one slip. One slip. Is it practical, David, or not?
Well, the government have budgeted for it. They've got a contingent liability that can probably deal with that. So why not? And I do agree about the not-for-profit sector taking on probably anything that's government funded, because then the funds are going and can serve people that don't have money, and those that do pay for it and probably get more services through the private sector.
How many retirement villages do you operate at Southern Cross?
40 of varying sizes.
So you shouldn't be in that industry. My proposition is this: you get aged care, private sector gets retirement.
No, we've got a lot of affordable housing, so I disagree with you.
Well,
So
hang
we've
on, IP Living have got a lot of affordable housing. The private sector can do that. But you guys should stick to your lane, don't you think?
We should, but I think we can add a lot of value into a retirement village that a private sector operator may not want to.
But the
provide.
private sector can add a lot of value to aged care, but they've agreed to concede aged care for retirement. What, you won't deal? It's a bit like...
No, I think I'm talking about government funding and where that should go and how that gets acquitted, and then the private sector doesn't have to worry about answering to government regulation, and we can do that.
You sound like Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's, in terms of your negotiating skills, I mean, there's a deal to be had here. Tony Massaro, to do all this, we're going to need a whole lot of money. The industry in 2035, how are we looking in terms of capitalisation and investors? Who are the owners of these assets in 2035? We know who owns Linda's. It's all of us little shareholders, because she's listed. But she's about to sell her business, so that's it. She's done. Where's the capital coming from?
So capital, Peter. So in the 10 years since you first thought of this back in 2025, the capital landscape has actually matured a bit. So we have both domestic as well as international capital that is coming here. In fact, one of the largest investors is this kind of new country that popped up called Greenland, Canada. Turns out there was incredible mineral wealth underneath the soil there. And these guys have a lot of money. They make the Norway Sovereign Wealth Fund look poor, okay? So we have a lot of equity and debt capital coming in from, I said, both domestic, because our superannuation is not stopping. We now have 33 million population, a lot more people in there. So, you know, all the likes of these guys have this money coming out of their eyeballs that they need to invest.
So, the super funds are back in the industry?
Super funds are back in the game.
So they've got over the RVG experience?
The old burned fingers that we all saw there back in the day have been, those memories, they're no longer valid. Everybody is saying, look, the industry has proven itself. Now, one interesting thing is, because we all know that one of the things that capital looks for is consistency. Consistency of ability to pay returns. So back in 2025, there was a television program called Four Corners. It's now called Four Blind Alleys. And as part of the Trump administration overreach, they basically said, not only are you not meant to deal with communist countries, but if you're going to be an ally of ours, you can't deal with idiots. So those guys were relegated, and they're now a children's program in the afternoon. So what that has done is we do not see the industry fluctuations like we saw when Aveo took a hit from Four Corners program, now Four Blind Alleys. And so as in industry, there's a lot more stability. Capital likes stability, number one. Capital also likes great management teams. So what we've seen is, if we look at kind of the 2000 to 2015, it was really cottage industry, right? There were people who were deep into it. This guy now with 3 hip implants and multiple bionic things, old Jim Hazel here, he's still kicking, 2035, going hard in the industry. But it was really a cottage industry. Then we saw more professionalism coming in. We saw actual career paths for the individuals working in this industry. And now, over the last 10 years, it's become really commercial. And so we have excellent talent at all levels. Capital likes that as well. So you've got an industry that's proven, a population that is aging, although also being very well, as Sally pointed out. They all take NMN. If you don't know what it is, you heard it here first, okay? Go look it up in conjunction with their IR saunas. So you've got the demand, you've got capable management teams, and capital seeks out excellent opportunities like that.
Do you think, now cast your mind back to 2025, do you think that the Brookfield deal, which has been all over the news, the fact that you're here worries me, because you should be there closing it. But do you think that the fact that Aveo, the actual sale or the sale by Brookfield of the Aveo portfolio very successfully has added to that strength of confidence?
Absolutely, right. So Brookfield had a plan. They came in, they executed it well. They got Tony Randello in there to clean it up a little bit. And they exited, which was always their plan, at a good multiple. So what happened is a lot of this capital then sits there and says, right, it does make sense. It's proven. The numbers are there. When you've got the super cycle that we're in from a demographic perspective. So new capital came in and got set. And it's actually been sold twice more, and each time for more than double what it was originally paid for, Peter.
Well, there you go. Now, what's great about being here today is that it is 2035, and we're looking back to 2025, and we're hearing all these stories about the transaction. But I've happened to have Tony Randello with me right now. Now, I know that there are certain NDAs, that's non-disclosure agreements for you non-lawyers in the room, so Tony can't say too much, even though they would have expired, because they would have been signed back in 2024, 2025. So I don't think there's anything stopping you talking about this, Tony. I might just kind of come over here and just, can we have a bit of a chat about, how's it all going?
Well, Peter, ever since IP Living acquired Aveo in 2025, with its capital source from, was it Greenland, Canada? Things have gone really well for me. I've gone back to my grassroots concreting with my father. I saw the light. We now create relocatable slabs. We saw an opportunity in that market because no one before us had seen that you would actually need to relocate a slab to be able to put a home on it at some point. So it's been a huge market for us. And, as Tony has explained, the confidence that came from capital because the media got off our case and we ended up with a minister that knew something about our sector, gave a lot of confidence to the capital that continued to invest. And all the models that were talked about in 2025 did eventuate. And what you don't know is that there are no longer any for-profit operators running aged care. They've all been taken over by Daniel.
Well, you heard it from the horse's mouth. There you go. Great news for the land lease communities. We've now got relocatable slabs. So you can actually pick up the whole slab and move the relocatable house to its Oh, I forgot my notes. To its new home. So, we're kind of getting somewhere, I think. That was very incisive, Tony. That was great. So the capital sources are there, but what about the customer? Our customers are a bit older. I think we've determined that, haven't we, Sally?
They are older. They're older and fitter,
But they're
and
fitter.
more well.
It's a new
They're
60.
thinner.
Did you say-
They're taking
thinner.
Ozempic. They are. Their obesity is a thing of the past now. Nobody's obese.
So no one's fat anymore.
Nobody's fat. And so all of the diseases and the horrible things associated with obesity have largely disappeared.
That's good news.
Yes,
Or is it
it
good
is.
news?
No, it's good news
It's good news.
because you're going to ask whether or not they're going to get out earlier again.
How good are you? How did you know that? Have you got this?
But yeah, so and the customer. So what's really great and what's fantastic for Tony's capital raising is that there's huge penetration now of of our population into retirement villages. It's jumped from 6% up to 25%.
Whoa.
Yes. There is a massive positivism around retirement villages and all of the incredible advantages that they have to offer. In fact, Mrs. Catherine Greiner has moved into our village at Vaucluse, and she's invited Adele Ferguson to come down and interview her about the benefits of living in a retirement village, which I understand the Minister will be attending.
Well, in fact, Adele is in one of our aged care facilities.
One of yours.
And how's she doing? She doing okay?
She's having the experience that everyone deserves in an aged care facility.
So Bianca, Adele picks up the phone out of her aged care facility and she rings you because she's kind of dementing a little bit, but she's ringing you because she's very concerned about the unfair and egregious deferred management fees being charged, and she wants to interview you about that. Do you agree to do the interview?
I was going to say no, but I should say yes. Absolutely. We believe in our industry. We're very positive about our industry.
But it's 2035, isn't the DMF dead?
Not necessarily.
No? So we've still got a DMF, have we?
We have one shape, a style of DMF. I mean, it's evolved. How has it evolved over the last 20 years from all sorts of types of DMF over a certain number of years from sharing capital gain to no sharing capital gain? I think it's just evolving. We're getting DMF paid up front now. It might be a smaller proportion. I don't think it's dead.
Because I've been speaking at these conferences for nearly 40 years, and the DMF is dead has been a theme going nearly every year.
Yep.
But eventually, if the minister gets hold of it and we get one piece of federal legislation, isn't there a risk, Minister, that we're going to actually have it legislated out?
Well, my interview with Adele is actually still going. She told me it would go for 20 minutes, but it's been going for 10 years now. And I'm getting a bit sick of it. But when it comes to the federal piece of legislation that we've just passed through Parliament in the days in the lead up to Chris Baines's how many summits by 24th?
You'll be really old, Chris.
It is still going. One of the key features that you notice in there is that we are mandating minimum height and density bonuses for retirement villages right across the country, brownfield locations, making sure that more and more people, Peter, can live in the type of accommodation that we were talking about back in 2025 when Adele, during the 50-minute interview that I originally had with her, and when she interrupted me, how many? 78 times. We were trying to talk about it that day, and we've now finally delivered on it, which is wonderful after all these years.
Can you give Bianca some advice about how to handle Adele in the interview? I'm just going to think, who's going to be Adele? What's the advice? The interview's about the death of the DMF, the egregious and unfair nature of the DMF, the fact that residents moving in, living there for a couple of years, are moving out not only with their capital being slightly eroded, but significantly eroded. Should Bianca do the interview?
Absolutely. And Bianca, you need to be prepared for, it's this classic Adele move. She calls it a gotcha moment. She'll sort of lean over halfway through the interview and give you one page of someone's contract, and she'll say something to you like this. How can you possibly expect an 84-year-old to understand the algebraic equation in that contract? And at that point, you hand that bloody thing right back, and you keep moving.
Good advice. Was that a real question?
It absolutely was a real question.
You did that
11 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was way. But you were good then too. You were really good. You did a great job. That was a really good job. Let's see how you go. Bianca, are you happy to do this interview?
Absolutely, Adele.
The deferred management fee is effectively a grab for cash. You're taking money out of the pockets of our ageing population. Their hard work, their years of toil are ending up in your pockets and your industry pockets. How can you sleep at night?
Peter, that's very good. You're giving me PTSD, actually, just listening to that question all over again.
Is it now appropriate to say I'm having a telecommunications issue? Sorry, Adele, what's that? I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
I'm suffering from dementia, early onset. I'd actually invite her to come and possibly live in one of our retirement villages and say it's not a financial decision, it's a lifestyle decision to move into a retirement village.
Okay. You say it's a lifestyle decision, but ultimately you're selling it as a domestic home product, and that product is appreciating over time, and you're taking all the appreciation. So how can you say that's fair?
Well, when you leave Adele, when you leave the village, do you need to pay for the refurbishment costs of your home, Adele? Does your family need to get involved?
Don't get personal with me. It's a very difficult thing. I'll let you off the hook.
Do you use the swimming pool, Adele? Do you use our gyms? Do you use all the services that we provide for you, Adele?
It's a question of paying what's reasonable. And I think ultimately the challenge for the industry is to have contracts that are fair and reasonable. And that can be defended against that type of scrutiny. Wouldn't you agree, Minister?
Sorry, are you still Adele or are you Peter?
No,
again?
I'm Peter now.
Look, this sector...
Good thing is he was about to launch himself at you.
Look, this is the fourth consecutive Dutton administration. We've put a wonderful set of policies and priorities in place to make sure that we can accommodate this growing cohort of older Australians. Now, of course, I've got no idea what your question was, but I'm answering the question that I wish you'd asked me.
What a perfect reply. We are running out of time, but I do want to touch on tax reform. Because I think again, Minister, you're there, but we have an expert tax consultant in the audience who must be about 110 now, Edgar. And I'll be interested in knowing whether the industry needs any tax reform. Because I do recall back when most people here weren't even born, in 1994, I think it was, 94-24? Yes. Tax ruling 94-24. And that gave the industry a massive spurt because all of a sudden there was a massive tax advantage, wasn't there, Edgar? Can I just ask you to talk a little bit about that and then what should be happening in 2035 by way of incentive so we can ask the Minister to take it back to his Cabinet colleagues?
And don't forget strata title.
In 1994, the ruling that issued basically gave a tax deduction for all your expenditures. So you buy your land, you got a tax deduction. You put a brick on the property, you start building it, you get tax deductions, and then you got assessed on everything you received, irregardless of the legal form. Was it a loan or whatever it was? That ruling was withdrawn in 2000, and in 2002 we negotiated a new ruling, which basically meant that paying income tax became your choice, because with the loan lease contracts that everyone basically does, you don't really end up paying tax, and you end up getting tax losses. But then in the year, also in 2000, we had GST introduced. And GST, we ended up having an odd situation where the for-profits versus the not-for-loss sector ended up having a GST differential advantage. So the not-for-loss or not-for-profit could get all their GST input tax credits back, whereas the for-profit sector could not. As a result, the cost of building new facilities was 10% higher for the for-profit sector. And that's probably the only tax issue that I see right now as being a key problem for the industry, because the rest of the building issues is not about tax, it's about costs of building them in terms of the builders' escalation of costs and that type of thing.
Okay, well, thank you. So we want the Minister to give us GST-free status. Minister, do you hear that? Can we do that? That'll stimulate the industry.
Yeah, that was really well understood by me, given my deep exposure to the tax system. And of course, I'll take that on notice.
Linda.
Minister, can I just ask you to add in income tax and payroll tax, because now the not-for-profits are gigantic and they're all very commercial. So just for the bits and pieces that might still be left of the private sector, just to make it an even playing field.
We're talking land tax, council. I mean, walk me through this.
Payroll tax.
Income tax and payroll
Income tax, yeah. It's the parity that the sector's been looking for a long time, hasn't it? Given those beefed up balance sheets that have spent the last 10 years injecting great new stock into the market, David.
Surely, Minister.
I agree with the payroll tax. I don't think you should.
Do you pay payroll tax?
No.
Do you pay any tax?
A bit of GST occasionally. A little
Enough
tiny
said.
bits of service. But if you're in the care environment, I don't believe you should be paying payroll tax. And particularly when you're operating in regional areas. So,
but don't forget, we're still waiting for the aged care rules to be defined, David.
yeah, and absolutely. And by hopefully your GST rate would have been bumped up to a reasonable level, so actually getting some good tax revenue in another way. It should happen 20 years ago.
So are you comfortable though, David, being in an environment where you are competing fairly with the private sector insofar as, the same tax treatment, the same GST treatment, the same state, local government treatment? Because you don't make profits, you make surpluses. What do you think? Are you in favour of that?
As long as we don't get taxed, I'm fine with whatever the government wants to do with the private sector and support them.
So you would support the proposition?
I'd support the proposition around payroll tax, absolutely, because of the barriers to, the difficulty around staffing and needing robots now and all forms of assistance and technology. But I'd absolutely support payroll tax being.
And what about income tax?
No, that's another matter. That's for the for-profits to fight that one out. As long as we're right, that can be.
We've run out of time. We've only got to page 1 of my 19 pages of notes. But it's been a great discussion, everybody, so thank you so much. But what's really clear is that as an industry, we're doing extremely, extremely well. For somebody who's been kind of absent, I feel like I've been in a time machine. It's been 15 years, I think, hasn't it, Chris, since I last spoke at one of these conferences. And then to come back and see the state of the industry and the passion around the participants of the industry. I was having a bit of fun with Tony Randello, but leadership like Tony has been occasion and providing the industry with, and with you, Daniel. As I sit back afar and was watching the machinations, I think Tony has steered an amazing course for Aveo and for his residents and staff. And I genuinely wish you all the best of luck with the transaction. Hopefully you're not lost to the industry, but our loss is the portable concrete slabs industry's gain. And Daniel, I suspect we will lose you to politics one day. I'm being a little bit flippant, but he's perfect for the job. And I would vote for Daniel Gannon over Peter. I shouldn't say that. I've got to be very careful, but over Peter Dutton all day long. So hopefully we get the calibre of the Daniel Gannons into politics, because we certainly need that kind of intellect coming on. What's really clear to me, though, as I've kind of come back to the industry, is that we all need to maintain our laser focus which is what's best for our residents. And every single decision we make every single day has to be resident focused. Every resident is your mum and your dad and your grandfather and your grandmother. It's always been our way at the Zig Inch Group. It's our way at IP Living, and will be going forward. I mean, you know, Mark and Dax and I, we're kind of talking this philosophy. We've got to prove it. And we're going to try really hard to prove it. And I would invite anyone to call us to account if we're ever found wanting in that regard. But a final thought, and this is kind of something which was passed down to me from my father when we used to talk about the industry and about retirement villages. And he used to say to me, because we were the builders as well as the operators, and we did everything. And he said, look, anyone can build a retirement village. You know, builders can build a retirement village, but it's the staff and it's the management style and it's the actual ethos of care and compassion that creates that intangible, that special sauce, that soul of a village. And you can tell when you walk into a village. You can tell how it feels. And sometimes the build form's old, and sometimes it's a bit decrepit, and sometimes it's kind of lacking some of the bells and whistles that the Vaucluse village has got with Retirement by Taylor. But the reality is, when that soul is there, it's very, very special. And that house, that building becomes a home. And we all crave to belong, and we all want to be part of a community. That's what we do in our industry. We create communities, and we create communities for people who are approaching a very vulnerable time of their life. Their life's coming to an end, and they know it. And it's really, really difficult. So let's make sure that this demographic wave, this massive wave, that we ride it all the way to the shore so we can paddle out again, and then we can make sure that when the next wave comes along, we're there with our board in hand and we don't kind of have a massive wipeout. So thank you very much for coming to the session. Thank you very much, panel, for participating, and hopefully we'll see you again next year. Thank you.